The Land Rover Defender has a production window of over 60 years starting at the original Series 1. In this buyer's guide we concentrate specifically on the Defender built between 1990 until production ceased in 2016 in preparation for the current model Defender. It was available as a 3 and 5 door as well as a single and double cab pickup truck and a 2-door hardtop. Many viewing this video will know the different variants under the 90, 110 and 130 names. These numbers refer to the shorter wheelbase with 2 side doors and the longer wheelbase with 4 side doors. The Defender was bought for a variety of reasons, and when looking at a used example, prior use should be considered. Military vehicles are commonly from the UK, Commonwealth and a small select Special Forces operations military vehicles in the USA. For US buyers, the majority of the civilian versions will be Alpine White for early models, with an exception made for Ralph Lauren, who received a US version painted black. For our Australian audience watching, the Defender has been available for over 40 years in civilian specification, although the popularity of the Toyota Land Cruiser means that newer used models can be harder to come by. In 2007, a variety of changes was made to the Defender, including the end of the inward-facing seats that allowed rear passengers to be seated side-on to the front of the vehicle. The removal of this option limited the maximum occupants to 7 from 9. This change was made due to European legislation outlawing inward-facing seating. Other changes included a more modern dashboard along with a new HVAC system for better ventilation performance. The exterior received a minor update with slight alteration to the bonnet to allow for a taller engine. The doors also received attention to better reduce the chances of corrosion. In 2011, the 2012 model year began production with a final array of updates and the acceptance from Land Rover that after decades of adjusting the Defender frame and engines for changing regulations, this would be the last, and a new generation of Defender, coded DC100, was planned as the 2015 safety regulations would mean the end of the old school Defender. Before we move on to the common problems to look out for, we have a list of recalls to check. At several times the flywheel on TD5 models was recalled due to occurrences of cracking and failure. Production dates affected were between September 1998 and June 1999. In April 2002 there was a recall on the flexible brake hoses due to risk of chafing to the point where a hole forms allowing brake fluid to escape. A second recall was issued in July 2017 for models produced from October 2014 to January 2015. In March 2004, the service brake was issued with a recall on a short batch of chassis. The parking brake was recalled in both December 2009 and April 2011. In August 2012, a recall was issued for seatbelt mounting. Defective welding on axles from September 2010 to July 2013 was recalled due to risk of axle flanges becoming detached. During November 2014, a recall was issued for production from September 2010 to July 2011 models for the front axle tube due to the risk of fracture and detaching from the wheel hub. A recall for faulty wheel hub assemblies was made in February 2015 due to the risk of the bolts within the hub becoming brittle and breaking. This recall was only issued for Defenders produced from 2014 to early 2015. Next up are the common issues, and before we begin, we'll state the obvious. Rust has become a long-term concern for any Defender owner. Depending on the age, the rust can vary from minor spots that need welding to the need for a whole new frame. The rear crossmember is the first area to check, as it is typically the first to suffer corrosion. If any Defender owner mentions undersealing, rust proofing and underside protection that is clear to see, take it as a positive buying sign. We should also mention that although this is a list of common faults, it does not mean that every Defender is likely to have these problems, but our guide will help you in knowing what to look out for to avoid surprises. If possible, then view a Defender on a rainy day and check around the windscreen and sunroof for any evidence of leaks from the seals. Pouring a small bottle of water around these areas on a dry day may be a good idea to check water isn't leaking through. As mentioned in our recalls earlier, brake lines leaking were a known issue and should be inspected on any age Defender you go to view before taking a test drive. Sticking with the brakes, and if the brake pedal requires more exertion or fluctuating demands of pressure to get the correct degree of stopping force, then the vacuum pump is the first place to check. A new part, coded LR014973 to replace the older designed unit, is a good solution. If the fuel gauge is giving unreliable readings, then a replacement fuel level sensor with a newer item coded YAD 500040 is a good starting point. Weak headlights leaving you feeling as though you're trying to navigate at night with two candles is a complaint of many owners. The long-term answer for those not so bothered with originality is an aftermarket LED headlight upgrade. If you hear a knocking noise, then it is likely caused by the drive shaft and engine oil sump making contact with the axles at maximum articulation. The resolution is to replace the oil sump with a reshaped part coded LR007598. Early 2000s models, particularly those built from 2002 to 2006, suffer transfer case failures due to insufficient lubrication. The transmission output shaft becomes stripped and no longer functions. Any used example with a replacement or rebuilt transmission and transfer case should be looked at favourably, as these can be expensive to fix if they've not already been done. Finally, differential issues are reported for a variety of issues. The Salisbury differentials fitted to pre-2011 models are considered sturdy and durable, but thin crown wheel teeth can break when under a particularly high torque demand and heavy load at the same time. Later differentials are more modern and advanced, but are not generally considered as sturdy by Defender owners. Next up we have the engines, but first a reminder that if you find this video helpful, adding a like really helps us and can help more people find the video, and consider subscribing for more from the channel. Defenders and diesel engines go hand in hand, so we'll cover them first. Starting with the earlier motors, there is a 2.5 litre inline 4-cylinder turbo diesel badged as a 200 TDI and then 300 TDI. It is important to separate these two motors though. While they have the same capacity, the 200 TDI was a heavy reworking of an older diesel engine in the Defender, while the 300 TDI is a new design. The 200 TDI has 107 brake horsepower, making it a big step up from the earlier Defender, and the 300 TDI has 111 brake horsepower. Fuel economy ranges from 32 miles per gallon, that's 8.9 litres per 100 kilometres, from the 200 TDI, and 34 miles per gallon for the 300 TDI. But you should note that owner reports vary widely depending on general use and road speeds. Maintenance is fairly simple and in the realm of most home mechanics, but to keep them reliable, consistent maintenance is required. Many consider these engines as strong and dependable, but there are several areas to check. Both the 200 and 300 TDI can suffer failures from the viscous coupling of the cooling fan, resulting in engine overheating. If you can spin the fan freely without any resistance, then the coupling has already likely failed. Water pumps are fairly robust on both engines, but fail with time, and the 300 TDI has a smaller pump that some owners consider having a shorter service life. If an owner mentions a cam belt change, check the proper tooling has been used to do the job. Without the correct tooling, the high torque specification needed on the crankshaft pulley bolt may not be reached, causing it to loosen. Turbocharger wastegates can seize shut on cars that haven't been used in some time, and while the Garrett turbocharger is generally reliable, they're not immune to wear. Oil leaks from the top end of the engine should be looked out for. These are generally caused by seals hardening over time. Finally, head gasket failure due to different heat ranges from head to block, as the metals are different, can cause failures. On the 300 TDI, the water pump is mounted higher up, so it will be unable to function with a small loss of coolant, whereas in the 200 TDI it is mounted lower, so it can lose over half its coolant before it struggles to reach the bottom of the pump. Next up is the TD5 motor. This 5-cylinder diesel with 2.5 litre capacity is favoured by many Defender owners for its power. The 122 brake horsepower may not seem like a huge jump from the 300 TDI, but the 221 pound-feet of torque for manual gearbox models and the 232 pound-feet of torque for automatic does make a difference. Average MPG is 26.9 or 10.5 litres per 100 kilometres, depending on specification. Tuning companies have offered up to 180 brake horsepower upgrades, and many owners that like to tinker appreciate the tunability of the motor. Common faults to look for include head gasket failure, usually caused by a failure of the plastic dowels to connect the engine block with the head. The replacement of the dowels with metal ones resolves this problem and any concern of it failing again. Any rattling sound at idle or squeaking noise as the engine is switched off is caused by the crankshaft pulley. The part has rubber within its construction and wears over time. If this issue is left, then the crankshaft oil seal can begin to fail and begin leaking. Fuel pressure regulators can fail and will require a new gasket and a new part made of metal. If this is sorted on a used example you are looking at, then take it as a positive buying sign. If the engine is misfiring, then the O-rings on the fuel injector harness likely have worn and need replacing. If the speedometer acts erratic on a test drive, then check for oil in the ECU. This is a known issue, with owners telling us that it is something to look out for every few months. Usually a plug seal for a sensor or a harness has failed and is letting oil escape the engine. Oil pump bolts can work their way loose, and so before driving home or test driving a possible purchase, it is worth checking the bolts or asking the owner if they've recently checked them to make sure it isn't working its way out of the threads. Finally, these engines are sensitive to overheating, so make sure coolant is kept topped up and has a history of being changed. We're sure TD5 owners will want to point out that generally these are strong units, and for the most part the TD5 is considered a robust and reliable engine with good power. After the TD5 came the Ford Duratorq Puma engine in 2.4 litre capacity, producing 122 brake horsepower and averaged about 25.7 miles per gallon, followed by the 2.2 litre capacity producing 122 brake horsepower with an average of 25.4 miles per gallon. Put that into metric, that's around 11.1 litres per 100 kilometres. The two engines share many similarities but do have a range of differences, including piston compression. We'll separate them for common faults, starting with the 2.4 litre. As an aside, we noticed some owners complaining about the short gearing in these motors, meaning there is a need to change gear regularly in slow moving traffic. Owners of the 2.4 and 2.2, please feel free to add any common issues we miss in the comments, as we found a mix of opinions and reviews from owners and specialists when creating our guide. When inspecting a 2.4 litre motor, take a bright inspection light, such as the cheap one we link in all of our videos, to the cylinder head and look for any signs of carbon deposits, leaks and small fractures. Cracks can appear in the cylinder head, and without removing it is impossible to know for sure the condition. However, listening to the engine at idle and checking if it drives as expected are ways to negate some risk. Camshafts and cam lobes can be scored. This is not as common as the cylinder head cracking, but if the engine performance is notably reduced, then get a specialist to take a look, as cam lobes have been known to break if left unrepaired, causing further damage. Fuel injectors can either fail due to contamination or age. If you have a diagnostic tool, you may be able to run each injector one at a time to see if one has failed or is failing, but rough running will make it clear on a test drive. On the 2.2 TDCi motor, the turbo pipe detaching is a known common fault, and there are 3 separate recalls for this issue. Fuel rail failures can make the engine jumpy, but this will be easy to spot on a test drive. High wear of the clutch was widely reported by owners, but it is believed that post-2012 models are better. Next up are the petrol motors, and although most of you will have heard of the 3.9 litre Rover V8, as it was ubiquitous in many British vehicles and across the Land Rover range, there is also the late 5 litre. The high-powered engine is rare to find in factory Defenders, but it isn't the only rare petrol engine Defender. Between 1997 and 2001, the BMW M52 motor was slotted into South African Defenders. Power in the 2.8 litre Defender is rated at 192 brake horsepower and is good for 0 to 60 in 9.3 seconds. Today these are a desirable but uncommon engine. The engine itself is fairly robust but susceptible to the same failures as the unit fitted to a variety of BMW vehicles of the time. Water pump failure, Vanos problems, oil leaks, and the valve cover and leaks in the cooling system due to problems with the radiator and expansion tank were all something to look out for. The 3.9 litre Rover V8 produces 182 brake horsepower with circa 14 miles per gallon or 20.18 litres per 100 kilometres, and was well understood in this age Defender. The motors are fairly robust. Engines that haven't been serviced on schedule or have a patchy record of maintenance can become problematic, with engine failures possible from worn camshafts or main bearings. Aside from that, Rover V8 owners have been known to clock up over 250,000 miles and generally consider the rest of the vehicle a higher concern than the motor. Finally, there is the 5 litre V8. These are fairly rare, and so common faults for this engine in a Defender are hard to find. However, this motor is also fitted to the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport, along with several Jaguars. A common fault to look out for are cam chain guides failing. Any tapping sound is a clear indication. However, guide chain pins were changed in 2013, making this problem rare by the time the motor is fitted to the Defender. Our picks would be for a well-cared TD5 model, or if you're feeling adventurous and have a higher budget, then the 5 litre V8 is a fun, if not slightly ludicrous prospect. Usually we would end it there, but that wouldn't do such an iconic vehicle justice. And so although we avoid showing preference in our guides at the miles driven, we will say this. A Defender owner we spoke with before this video said, look for one with good bodywork, assume mechanical issues will exist, and expect it to fail its yearly inspection as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow. But on the flip side, you'll enjoy every mile it works, every repair you do with your own hands, and much like a three-legged dog, you'll accept it to be a bit slow and susceptible to the odd fall, but you'll argue to anyone that will listen that it has a character that you wouldn't change for the world. You'll see it as if it was your own blood and make it part of your family. And that's probably why many Defender owners remain Defender owners, and the community around them has stayed strong. If you enjoy waving to an enthusiastic stranger because they own the same car as you, if you are happy to sacrifice a Saturday afternoon holding a screwdriver and an oily rag, and if you love the idea of occasionally turning off the tarmac and driving into the muddy scenery that other drivers can only gawk at from the safety of the road, then some might think you've got a screw loose. Ignore them, because fortunately for you, so is your Defender. As ever, all the best with your car search.